Welcome to Dreamtale Sleep Stories. Tonight's reading is The Voice of the Earth. Settle into your bed or sofa and let your shoulders, jaw, and eyelids grow heavy. Inhale slowly, 1, 2, 3, and sigh the air away, allowing the day to fade into quiet dark. With every soft inhale, you invite fresh English phrases. With every gentle exhale, stray thoughts drift farther off. Behind my voice flows a gentle melody, renowned for guiding the mind toward deep relaxation. Keep your eyes closed or follow the captions, whichever feels right. Simply receive the rhythm and resonance of the language. Deep in rest, tonight's phrases will take root like seeds, ready to bloom into stronger English skills with the morning light. When you feel settled, hold that unhurried breath and allow yourself to drift into the tale. The voice of the earth begins now. And when the story's final line has faded, the music will linger a little longer, carrying you gently, deeper into sleep. The Voice of the Earth. Emily Carter stood in the middle of her small farm, looking at the brown soil with worried eyes. The 25-year-old woman had inherited this land from her grandfather 2 years ago. But farming was proving much harder than she had expected. The vegetables in her garden were growing slowly, and the corn in the field looked weak and yellow. She wiped the sweat from her forehead and sighed deeply. Other farms in the valley were using chemical fertilizers and pesticides to help their crops grow. But Emily wanted to farm naturally, just like her grandfather had taught her. She believed that the earth could provide everything plants needed if she could just understand how to work with it properly. That morning, Emily decided to start preparing a new section of the field for planting. She took her shovel and began to dig into the rich, dark soil. As she worked, she thought about her grandfather's stories of how farmers in the old days seemed to know exactly what the land needed. He had always said that good farmers could listen to the earth, but Emily had thought this was just a metaphor. As the sun rose higher, Emily knelt down to examine the soil more closely. She picked up a handful of the dark earth and let it run through her fingers. Suddenly, she heard something that made her freeze in surprise. It was very quiet, almost like a whisper, but she was sure she heard a voice saying, "Too dry here. Water needed." Emily looked around quickly. There was no one else in the field. She was completely alone. She must have imagined it. But as she continued working, she heard the voice again, clearer this time. "Plant the tomatoes on the south side. More sun there." Her heart began to beat faster. Was she going crazy? She had been working alone on the farm for months now, and maybe the loneliness was affecting her mind. But the voice sounded so real, so gentle and wise. Emily decided to test it. She moved to a different part of the field and knelt down again. This time, when she touched the soil, the voice came immediately. "Good soil here. rich with nutrients, perfect for carrots and potatoes. Emily stood up and brushed the dirt from her hands. Either she was losing her mind or something incredible was happening. She decided to follow the voice's advice and see what would happen. Over the next few weeks, Emily planted her vegetables exactly where the voice told her to. When the voice said a particular area needed water, she watered it. When it told her to add compost to a section, she did. When it warned her that certain plants were getting too much sun, she built small shade structures. The results were amazing. Emily's vegetables began to grow faster and healthier than ever before. Her tomatoes were large and red. Her carrots were sweet and crisp, and her lettuce was green and fresh. Other farmers in the valley began to notice and wonder what Emily was doing differently. One morning, while Emily was working in her garden, her neighbor Henry walked over from the next farm. Henry was 70 years old and had been farming all his life. He was known throughout the valley as one of the most experienced farmers around. "Emily," Henry said, looking at her flourishing vegetables with amazement, "I've never seen crops grow like this. What's your secret?" Emily wasn't sure how to answer. She couldn't tell Henry that she was hearing voices from the soil. He would think she was crazy. Instead, she said, "I'm just trying to pay close attention to what the plants need." Henry nodded thoughtfully. "Your grandfather was like that too," he said. "He always seemed to know exactly what to do. Some people said he could read the land like a book." This comment made Emily very curious. Maybe her grandfather had experienced the same thing she was experiencing now. That evening, she went through his old journals, which she had stored in the farmhouse attic. As she read his careful notes about planting and harvesting, she found several strange entries. One entry said, "The East Field told me it needs rest this year. We'll plant cover crops instead." Another said, "Soil near the old oak tree wants beans this season. Says they will add nitrogen." Emily realized that her grandfather had been listening to the earth too. A few days later, a young woman named Sarah arrived at Emily's farm. Sarah was a student from the agricultural college in the nearby city, and she was spending the summer learning about different farming methods. The college had sent her to work with several farms in the valley, and Emily's farm was on her list. "I've heard amazing things about your crops," Sarah said when she introduced herself. "The professors at college are very interested in sustainable farming methods. Would you mind if I observed your techniques?" Emily was nervous about having someone watch her work so closely, but she agreed. Sarah seemed friendly and genuinely interested in learning. Over the next few days, Sarah helped Emily with various farm tasks while carefully observing everything she did. "You have such an intuitive understanding of the land," Sarah commented one afternoon as they watered the vegetable garden. "How do you know exactly where to plant each crop?" Emily hesitated. She had grown to trust Sarah, but she still wasn't ready to explain about the voice. "My grandfather taught me to pay attention to the soil and the plants," she said. "Every piece of land is different, Sarah nodded enthusiastically. That's exactly what we're learning in school. The industrial approach to farming treats all land the same, but sustainable agriculture recognizes that each farm is unique. As the summer progressed, Emily became more confident in her ability to communicate with the earth. The voice became clearer and more detailed. It would tell her about insects that were planning to attack certain plants, about areas where the soil was becoming too compacted, and about changes in the weather that were coming. One day, the voice gave Emily some concerning news. Big storm coming soon. Very dangerous. Wind and rain will destroy crops. Emily looked up at the sky. It was a beautiful, clear day with no clouds in sight. The weather forecast had predicted sunny skies for the rest of the week. But the voice had been right about everything else, so Emily decided to take its warning seriously. She called Henry and asked him to come over. When he arrived, she said, "Henry, I think we might have a big storm coming. We should prepare our crops." Henry looked at the clear sky and shook his head. "Emily, where did you get that idea? The weather report says it's going to be sunny all week." Emily knew she couldn't explain about the voice, so she said, "I just have a feeling. My grandfather always said that farmers should trust their instincts about the weather." Henry respected Emily's grandfather and had learned to trust Emily's judgment about farming, so he agreed to help her prepare. They spent the next 2 days building windbreaks around the most vulnerable plants and securing anything that could be blown away by strong winds. Sarah helped them tie down the tomato plants and cover the tender vegetables with protective sheets. "This is really good practice," she said. "Even if the storm doesn't come, it's important to know how to protect crops." On the third day, Emily woke up to dark clouds gathering on the horizon. By noon, the wind was picking up, and by evening, the storm hit with incredible force. Rain poured down, and the wind howled through the valley. Emily, Henry, and Sarah stayed in the farmhouse, listening to the storm and hoping their preparations would be enough. But the voice had more to tell Emily. As the storm raged outside, she heard it clearly. "Water will flood the low field. Dig channels to direct it away from the crops." Emily knew she had to act quickly. "We need to go outside," she told Henry and Sarah. "The water is going to flood the lower field." "Emily, you can't go out in this storm," Henry protested. "It's too dangerous." But Emily was already putting on her rain jacket. "The crops will be destroyed if we don't do something now." Sarah grabbed her jacket too. "I'll help," she said. Henry, seeing that the two women were determined to go out into the storm, reluctantly joined them. Fighting against the wind and rain, the three of them made their way to the lower field. Emily could see that water was already beginning to pool in dangerous areas. Following the voice's guidance, she showed Henry and Sarah where to dig small channels to direct the water away from the crops. "How did you know to do this?" Sarah shouted over the noise of the storm. "Experience," Emily shouted back, not wanting to explain the truth in the middle of a hurricane. They worked for hours in the storm, digging channels and building small barriers to protect the crops. By morning, when the storm finally passed, Emily's farm had suffered much less damage than the other farms in the valley. Henry surveyed the results with amazement. "Emily, your instinct saved our crops. If we hadn't prepared and redirected that water, we would have lost everything." Other farmers from the valley came to see how Emily's farm had survived the storm so well. Her neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, had lost half her corn crop, and the farmer on the other side of the valley had lost most of his vegetables. But Emily's crops were mostly intact. "How did you know the storm was coming?" asked Mrs. Johnson. "The weather forecast was completely wrong." Emily looked at Henry and Sarah, who were both watching her with curious expressions. She realized that she couldn't keep her secret much longer. These people were her friends and neighbors, and they deserved to know the truth. "Can I tell you something that might sound strange?" Emily said slowly. "For the past few months, I've been hearing the voice of the earth. The soil tells me what it needs, and it warned me about the storm." There was a long silence. Emily was afraid that everyone would think she was crazy and never trust her again. But then Henry started to laugh. "Emily," he said, "your grandfather told me the same thing many years ago. I thought he was speaking metaphorically, but maybe he meant it literally." Sarah was staring at Emily with excitement. "This is incredible," she said. "You're describing what indigenous farmers have talked about for thousands of years. The ability to communicate with the natural world is a real phenomenon that modern agriculture has forgotten." Mrs. Johnson nodded thoughtfully. "My grandmother used to say that her mother could predict the weather by listening to the plants. I always thought it was just folklore." Over the following weeks, Emily began to teach her neighbors what the earth had taught her. She couldn't give them the ability to hear the voice directly, but she could share the wisdom it had provided. She showed them how to test the soil with their hands, how to observe the plants for signs of what they needed, and how to work with natural patterns instead of against them. The other farmers in the valley began to change their methods. They reduced their use of chemical fertilizers and pesticides, and instead focused on building healthy soil and creating biodiversity on their farms. The results were remarkable. Not only did their crops grow better, but the land itself became healthier. Sarah stayed at Emily's farm for the rest of the summer and documented everything she learned. She planned to write her thesis about sustainable farming methods and the importance of traditional agricultural knowledge. "What you're doing here could help change how people think about farming," she told Emily. As autumn approached, Emily reflected on how much her life had changed since she first heard the voice of the earth. She had gone from being a struggling young farmer to becoming a leader in her community. More importantly, she had discovered a deep connection with the natural world that enriched her life in ways she had never imagined. The voice still spoke to her every day, guiding her decisions and helping her understand the needs of the land. Sometimes it told her about the underground networks of fungi that connected different plants, or about the beneficial insects that were helping to control pests naturally. The more she listened, the more she learned about the complex and beautiful ecosystem that surrounded her. One evening, as Emily walked through her thriving fields, she heard the voice say something that made her smile. "Thank you for listening." The earth is grateful for farmers who understand. Emily knelt down and placed her hands on the soil. "Thank you for teaching me," she whispered back. "I promise to take care of you." As the stars appeared in the clear sky above, Emily felt a deep sense of peace and purpose. She had found her calling as a farmer who could bridge the gap between modern agriculture and ancient wisdom. The voice of the earth would always guide her, and she would always listen. That night, Emily called her parents and told them about her success with the farm. She didn't mention the voice. That was still her special secret. But she told them about the healthy crops, the supportive community, and her plans for the future. "Your grandfather would be so proud," her mother said. "He always said that you had the heart of a true farmer." As Emily fell asleep that night, she dreamed of all the farms around the world, where farmers were learning to listen to the earth again. In her dream, the whole planet was green and healthy, and the voice of the earth was speaking to people everywhere, teaching them how to live in harmony with the natural world. The next morning, Emily woke up ready for another day of working with the earth, knowing that every day would bring new lessons and new opportunities to help her community thrive.